We all have dreams taller than a lighthouse, but if your consistency is weaker than morning mist, you're drifting toward a life of regret. This is the story of Kofi, and the one lesson that changed everything. In a forgotten coastal town called Mirabel, there lived a young man named Kofi, a dreamer with ambitions taller than the lighthouse, but consistency weaker than morning mist. Every dawn, his grandmother would call out, "Kofi, the tide waits for no one." Kofi would groan, "Just a bit longer, Grandma," and drift back to sleep for 2 more hours. He constantly talked about building something meaningful. He envied the fishermen who owned their boats, the marketplace vendors who ran thriving stalls, even the bus driver who commanded respect in his pressed uniform. But Kofi never followed through. One week he'd promised to learn carpentry, the next he'd abandon the tools. One month he'd vow to save money, the next he'd spend it all. Kofi had vision but zero discipline. One afternoon he met Mr. Tobias, a weathered former sailor who lived alone near the harbor docks. Every morning, Mr. Tobias would rise at dawn, mend his fishing nets, stretch his aging joints, practice knot tying, and tend his small vegetable patch. Kofi grew fascinated. Why does he work so hard? He's retired. No deadlines. No boss. One day, Kofi approached him. "Mr. Tobias, why do you stick to the same schedule every day? Doesn't it feel repetitive?" Mr. Tobias paused, set down his rope, and replied, "Son, habits are like ocean currents. What you practice today shapes where you'll drift tomorrow. You might not notice the movement now, but eventually your habits will either carry you to shore or pull you under." That night, Kofi lay awake staring at the ceiling. He replayed every abandoned goal, every half-started project. What if success wasn't about talent? What if it was simply about repetition? The next morning, before the fishermen launched their boats, Kofi dragged himself out of bed. His mind screamed to stay warm, but he recalled Mr. Tobias's words. He splashed cold water on his face, laced up his worn sneakers, and started jogging along the beach. He barely made it 300 meters before wheezing, but he refused to quit. Day 2, he jogged again. Day 3, again. By day 8, his calves still burned, but something shifted. He felt more alive. Then he stacked another habit. Reading for 45 minutes every evening. No negotiations. He told nobody, made no announcements. He simply committed in silence. Months rolled by. One evening, sitting on the harbor wall watching the sunset, Kofi caught himself grinning. His body felt capable, his thoughts clearer. He barely recognized when discipline stopped feeling like a battle. His friend Amara noticed the change. "Kofi, what happened to you? You used to be the master of starting and stopping." Kofi chuckled. "I didn't transform overnight. I just chose one action and repeated it until it became automatic. Then opportunity knocked. A shipping company announced openings requiring both physical endurance tests and technical knowledge assessments. Kofi applied immediately. On test day, dozens of young men showed up, some cocky, some trembling. Kofi stayed centered. The horn sounded. They began running. Many bolted ahead but burned out fast. Kofi maintained a steady rhythm. Months of daily practice had built something deeper than motivation. When feelings faded, his routine didn't. He passed the first stage. Next came the written examination. While others panic-studied the night before, Kofi sat calmly. 45 minutes daily for months had constructed a solid foundation. He cleared that stage too. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived at his door. "Congratulations, you have been accepted." Kofi froze. His hands shook. His grandmother looked up from her sewing, confused. He turned to her, eyes glistening, and whispered, "Grandma, I actually did it." She embraced him fiercely. The neighborhood celebrated with music and dancing, but the proudest soul there wasn't Kofi. It was Mr. Tobias. "You see, son," he said with a knowing smile, "motivation gets you started, but habits carry you when willpower runs dry." The lesson: we convince ourselves that massive change demands massive action. But true transformation grows from tiny habits practiced daily. Not occasionally, not when convenient, but until they become who you are. You don't need to reinvent yourself completely. Begin with one micro-habit. Jog for 8 minutes, read 3 pages, complete 5 push-ups, wake 20 minutes earlier. Your habits architect your destiny. Choose with intention. If the story moved you, tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what's one habit you're starting today? Subscribe for more stories that could change your life. Let's grow together.